hi everyone. Hi PlayMU and potentially Team Liquid and other internet people. Thanks so much for stopping by to our little weird corner of whatever this is. And welcome to PlayMU Talks with Team Liquid, starring the very lovely and my new best friend, Vivian Nguyen. How are you, Vivian?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. So we're going to spend the next hour talking about a bunch of different things relating to the world of esports and a little bit outside of that very cool bubble. We're going to save probably around the last 10 minutes to questions from chat. And don't worry, chat, if you don't have questions, we have questions prepared. We're ready to go in. We're very, very, very prepared. This has been in the
We're prepped.
works. We're okay. This has been in the works since August, right? Or like September.
I think so. Yeah, it's been like a couple of months. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll do a brief introduction of who Vivian is, and then she could talk to you a little bit more about herself. But essentially, I got in touch with Vivian while we were planning the talk with Steve that we did back in the summer. And Vivian was essentially the point of contact for the entire thing, and the whole event would not be possible without her. She's also responsible for the recent TL Hacks event, the hackathon that Team Liquid put on that saw, I think, at least over 70 submissions. I viewed on their page of just all the winners and all the submissions, and it is absolutely mind boggling. Like all the Team Liquid and Blue and other themed hacks that people did, both just in pure programming and there. And yeah, Vivian pretty much does everything from personal branding to communication. So please give a very warm welcome chat to Vivian. Hi, Vivian, again.
Hey, what's up? Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I'll continue on from that intro, which was very lovely, by the way. You went totally into that, so you know your stuff.
Yeah.
But
Woo.
yes. But yeah. So my official title over at Team Liquid is Business Intelligence Data Manager, or just Data Manager for short. Half of that involves research and development. So basically, I do a lot of research into how we can engage with different communities outside of traditional esports and gaming. And I also do data management, as you see in my title. All the information and stuff you see in Team Liquid, I manage them all. I make sure they're super nice and neat and tightly packed, and easy to access for people. Outside of that, and yes, you are right. I co-founded Liquid Hacks alongside my good friend Janet, who I'll be bragging about for the next hour. It's basically Team Liquid's first hackathon event. It was a blast, and I'll talk about it more later. And also, as you can see, in my off time when I'm not thinking about esports, I like to knit. So right now, I'm actually knitting a little wrap, a little shawl, if you will. So this is if you're wondering what I'm doing, like with my hands here, that's what I'm doing.
Very nice. I definitely through like the start of like literally right before the pandemic started, I got into cross stitching. So I'm very and watching things and then just doing something with your hands. Honestly, the best idea ever.
Right? Yeah, you get to watch your favorite movies and shows, and you get to like have something at the end to you're productive,
Oh
basically.
yeah, 100%. So we're gonna start getting into the questions. The first thing I really wanted to ask, and I know you've gone over this with me in calls before, but just so that way people get a better sense for who you are. They know what you do, but how did you get your start at Team Liquid?
It's quite an interesting story. So I've been into gaming pretty much my entire life. Whether it's stealing my cousin's Game Boy Color to play Pokemon, or whether it's owning my first console, which was the PS2. I've been playing a lot of different games. And so naturally, it made a lot of sense that I wanted to get into game design. I wanted to see how games were being developed from the publisher side. But obviously, there's a lot of resistance to that, especially with me being a woman and being Asian and being LGBTQ. There's a lot of there are a lot of people saying that you shouldn't do that, or it's like you should go for something more safe. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll listen to the crowd and I'll pursue something that's a lot more safer. So when I went into university, I declared my major in computer science, and I did graduate with my degree about a couple of years ago. So looking into my senior year of university, I joined my school's gaming club, Slug Gaming, and they were focused on both gaming and esports. I wasn't really into esports as much. I'm more of a story-driven gamer. So I was looking at the community and all the things they were doing in the past, and I was like, wow, I really want to get into esports. That's super cool. But then I had this realization. It was a very like, oh crap moment where I was at a very strong disadvantage walking into it because one, I didn't have any internship experience. Typically, when you intern at like Blizzard or Riot or like all these like big gaming companies, they typically want you to go back for another year. Well, I was already a senior, so and I wasn't planning on going to school for another year because who wants to do that? So I was already at a disadvantage. I couldn't do any internships. Number two, I didn't know anyone in esports at all. Like I was literally like I did not know anybody. I knew people at my school. I was pretty well known there, but I was not well known in the esports realm. And I also, the third thing was that my social media accounts all at zero, like zero followers, zero following, everything. So I was already at a disadvantage, like wanting to pursue esports. I was like, well, I'm gonna have to work my butt off to get the experience that I need to even have a chance at getting a job. So for about 6 months, I moved up the ladder in the gaming club. I went from, I think, like just a general club member to vice president in about 5 or 6 months or so. So that meant that like the executive board saw like my skills and what I was capable of doing because I was again trying to work my butt off to get some kind of experience. Around February, I think, winter quarter, Team Liquid was opening up for opportunities in positions like writing and community management. So I was like, okay, well, I have written a few articles, and I do kind of community manage, so I guess I can apply for these. So I did, thinking that I would not get the job. And me being somebody who wanted a job before graduating, I was like, well, I'm gonna at least like shoot for the moon, and if I miss, I hope I can land among the stars. For 2 weeks, I was just kind of like I didn't think much of it. But then afterwards, I got an email reply from the editor in chief at the time, and he was like, "Hey, we saw your resume." I'm like, "Oh, great! You saw the resume where I had like one thing for esports." They were like, "Yeah, we saw your resume. We noticed that you had some experience in writing. We're curious to see if you're interested in writing for our editorial team." And I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, I applied for community, but I got into writing, so cool. But I still wanted to pursue community as well. So for about a month or so, I was kind of juggling between interviewing and working with the community team as well as writing articles for editorial, or at least writing a practice article. So it was about a month or two of just like trials and just me like trying very hard to not like get too overwhelmed because it felt like every response that I made with anyone at Team Liquid was like a do or die. Like it's like if I said one word wrong, it was going to be the end of it. Like I was not going to be called back. So for the month I was working, and eventually after a while, when the trials were finished and I went through all the interviews, they looked at my work and they said, "Hey, like we actually love your work. We love working with you. Do you want to be a part of the team?" And I'm here just going, wait, hold up. Team Liquid is hiring me. Like me. I was like, it was surprising. Like I remember just being speechless. And I also remember running to my friend's apartment who was like 5 minutes by foot. So I like literally ran to her apartment and was like, dude, I just got hired by Team Liquid. And she started freaking out too. And so like it was like this celebration of just wow, like I wasn't expecting to make it. So I did get a job before I graduated. I worked for Team Liquid for the last quarter of my university year or university career. And then from that time on, I started writing more articles. I got more invested. I learned more about esports, and I took on a lot more roles as the year went on. And eventually, it got to the point where I was, taking on more community stuff, and I was doing more data management and all that stuff. That's where I kind of like dwindled into data science and whatnot. So I got to a point where I had basically enough work for a full-time load, but the pay wasn't there, right? Because I was part-time. But I guess like my work was being, like people saw my work, my bosses saw my work, and they offered me, I think about a year and a half later, they were like, "Hey, we noticed you're like taking on a bigger role, and we want to make sure you're compensated well for it. Do you want a full-time job?" And I'm here going, wait, so not only did you just offer me a job at Team Liquid, you're offering me a full-time job. Like I can get paid to do all this stuff. And they're like, yes. And so I was like through the roof. It was like probably one of like the greatest moments to happen in that year or that month that it happened. So fast forward to now, like I'm still full time. I still get paid to do all the things that I love. And it's just I couldn't ask for anything better. So it's a really long-winded story. But I basically went from this kid that was hopeless and didn't think they could make it into an industry they wanted to now, sitting here talking to you, you all,
Yeah.
about how I got my job. So it's a wild journey, and it's only going to get wilder from here.
That's awesome. Another question that I had for you was more about the culture of sort of, I don't want to say behind the scenes esports, because sort of you sort of make up a lot of the Team Liquid brand as a data science manager, right? Do you feel that organization culture that isn't directly related to esports players, like coaches and managers and people that actually like are on stage playing the video game, do you think that's not really as well known as that sort of the public sector of esports?
I think so. It's I think because esports in the very beginning, before it was even called esports, I think it was just called competitive gaming or electronic gaming, was primarily about the competitive aspect. So it was always about people, meeting up locally, and well, not now because COVID,
Right.
but meeting up locally, and doing tournaments and stuff. So, the core of esports is still competitive, and it's very strongly competitive at that. You're looking at all the players on your streams. You're looking at the coaches, the managers, like you mentioned. You're looking at all the fans and stuff. But I think now that esports is more of an industry and it's becoming a lot more mainstream, I think we're starting to see an immersion of the sort of community aspects of esports. Without the fans, without the support from communities, like esports wouldn't be where it is now, right? Like you're not going to play for an empty stadium. So it just makes sense that community aspects of esports should be more well known, and I'm surprised that it isn't. And I'm also very surprised that there are not many like huge community like initiatives that are going on. There's more than there were like beforehand, but I think there's still a lot more to go. And that's just the community stuff. Like we're not even looking into the academic side of things, the scholastic side of things, where esports is making its way into academic curriculum, and professors and like faculty and administration are looking to invest into providing resources for students to not only become pro players, but also to develop their skills and apply them into esports. So whether you're a graphic designer, whether you're in finance, whether you're in law, whether you're anything, like there's a spot for you in esports, and I think that needs to be more well known.
I think playing off of that, you're someone who, as you mentioned, going into your esports career, had zero personal branding, had zero sort of awareness on social media of what needed to be done. But now, you have a decent Twitter following. You have, like, even when we made the tweet about this event, you had two people like immediately retweet you. You have as the kids say, clout. What do you do, or or what is some advice to sort of advocate for your own personal brand, and how do you sort of practice building your personal brand in your day to day?
Um, so personal brand is a lot easier than say an whole org, because with orgs and like bigger brands, you have to be considerate of what the overall mission statement is of the organization or company that you're representing. Whereas with personal branding, it's a lot easier because the only person that you need to consider is you. So when I first started out, to be honest, I was pretty lost. I spent like the first year of esports going, what in the world am I like? Why am I here? Like, what do I offer to, not just the esports space, but just to people in general? Really what I think about when it comes to my own personal brand is, what are my true values? Like, what do I believe in, and what value do I want to give to people? It doesn't have to be strictly esports related. I know that I'm still a nub at esports, and it's been 2.5 years since I've been working here. So my personal brand, for example, revolves around just wanting to help people and wanting to give people an understanding of esports, giving them, an education in a way that I wish that I had when I was starting off. Since I came at such a huge disadvantage compared to a lot of other people who have had internship experience and have already like networked with people. I wanted to focus less on I don't have a following compared to everyone else, and more on yeah, I don't have this, but it's not going to stop me from wanting to help people and learn. So when it comes really to personal branding, it's just thinking about like who you are, what you want to do, honing that down to specifics, and then just following that from there, right? When people think of me, I want them to think of the things that I've done, the achievements I've accomplished, and of course like my hobbies. Like I'm the only person in my calls that like knits. People, like it's you know what I mean. Like it's like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I'm thinking of this person. Oh, it automatically clicks to, they play games or they go skiing every year or they do whatever, right? That's really what I think of with personal branding is just figuring out what you want to do, figuring out who you are, why you want to do certain things. And being very specific about it and just investing your time into what you want to do.
Okay, very nice. So you mentioned that in your personal branding, you know, that esports is a very connection-heavy industry, and that you sort of used your connections while you were working in your gaming club and became the vice president of your gaming club, and then also your writing experience to land your job at Team Liquid. What do you think now that you're here? Now that you work for the big horse esports company, the color blue. What do you feel is the most important connection that you've made? And can you give some advice on how people can make connections to sort of make the landing the job in the esports industry easier?
Yeah. Let's see. Most important. I think the most important connection or connections that I've made are probably with people who I'm still good friends with to this day. It's like, to me, being social, having connections, I think is super important. I'm someone that likes to have like one-on-ones or like small group talks with people. I just like to learn about people's stories and see where they've been in life and how they want to approach, you know, their future steps. So I don't have one particular connection that really like tugs at my heartstrings. I think there are quite a few people who have made an impression on me and are people who I hope I can have that connection with for years to come. As for how to connect with people, this is actually one of the most asked questions that I get from people is they're always like, you have like all these friends and you have all these amazing memories. I see them all over social media, which I don't post too often. Like, let's be real. I'm someone that values the experience more than telling people about the experience. So I try to focus on that. But one thing that I like to tell students is don't get so caught up in the idea of networking or connecting just to make connections or just to network. It's not to say that networking is inherently bad, because it isn't. Networking is just, like, I think by definition is just you're connecting with people. But I think that one thing that I see that should change is that students and people in general just get so caught up in the idea of, I have to know as many people as possible in order to succeed. I have to, get my name out there to as many people as possible in order to succeed. And that's not necessarily true. If you try to navigate making friends and making connections as a business transaction, as opposed to wanting to get to know the person better, it's gonna bite you back in the long run. People are just gonna see you as like acquaintances, and they're only gonna see you as like just people to collaborate with, as opposed to being like, hey, like, you want to go out for a coffee and like just talk and stuff. Like, I think that's something that's really important. And that's how I approach all my conversations too, is like, I don't try to talk to people as just their professional selves. I like to talk to them as people, because they are people. And I think people should be treated as such.
I think that also is a testament to how you sort of got to Team Liquid without any real professional connections in the esports industry. You know, it's not always about how many people you know, but it's about, you know, the relationships with the people that you know. You know, you don't necessarily have to know Steve in order to get a job at Team Liquid, but you could maybe know someone who knows someone. And really, if you show the work ethic and put in the good work, and like, as you said, you know, a year and a half to like grind and show people that, like, hey, I'm Vivian. I'm awesome. Look at all this cool stuff that I'm doing. That's really how you get to where. That's really I mean how you got to where you are, and how hopefully people can follow suit and maybe get to a similar state as well. I want to move on and talk a little bit about Liquid Hacks, which is the event slash program that you co-founded during your time at Team Liquid, which just wrapped up. I believe it was November 8th and 9th. Pretty sure.
It was the weekend of November 6th through 8th, I think.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, 6th through 8th. Yeah.
All right, amazing. And that was the same weekend we did Extra Life, so I didn't get to watch the process and see all the fun panels and stuff, but it was very interesting to talk to you in the catacombs and be like, what are you doing? Yeah, what are you doing? So for all the wonderful viewers at home, what exactly is Liquid Hacks?
So this is where I start rambling for the next 30 minutes. So Liquid Hack. So for those of you who don't know, a hackathon is a social engineering competition where people can come together either solo or as a team to create software or hardware-based projects. I've been going to hackathons for like a good few years now. And I just love the idea of being able to get into what is essentially like a workspace sandbox and just try to create things and be innovative in a low risk environment. Our other co-founder, my partner in crime, my love and joy, she is everything to me, Janet Fang, she also co-founded this with me. She brings on the hackathon organizing experience because she's been in the hackathon scene way longer than I have. And she also has experience with organizing several events. We actually did meet at one of her hackathons and it was super cool. So the way it started was that, I met her there and we met really briefly. I think about a few months had passed and it was LCS finals in Oakland and I was working the TL booth, and I remember as I was walking down the long line that we had for the booth, because we're Team Liquid and we're that cool, we had this super long line, and I saw her and I had recognized her and I was just like, you look really familiar, and she's like, yeah, you look familiar too, and I was just like, wow, we remember each other, it's great. So we got each other's contact info. We then went out for lunch later on, and we started talking and just like catching up and stuff like that. And she had told me that, she, on top of being a coding and hackathon nerd, she was also an esports nerd. Hence why she was at the booth. Like she really loves playing League of Legends and all that stuff. So we thought of this idea. It's like, hey, what if we just did a Team Liquid hackathon? And like the second we said that, like I'm pretty sure the restaurant just looked at us like we were weird, but we were like screaming with joy. We were just like, that would be super insane to have like esports and hackathons and tech just like come together so beautifully. And there are so many puzzle pieces that just fit perfectly to the point where it's just like, why don't we have one? So we were getting the idea down for about a year or so. We didn't find the right time for it, unfortunately, for like 2019 or so, but coming into 2020 with COVID happening and people sort of being forced to stay at home and stuff, we felt like it was a good time to host it digitally. Typically hackathons are offline and they're on site, but obviously we can't do that now. So we were like, let's just do the whole thing virtually. Let's just have them all meet on Discord. Let's do some Twitch streams of some panels and some workshops, and we'll see what we can do. So we spent a good few months trying to think of the look and the feel of the hackathon. We wanted to make sure that it was as inclusive as possible, both for beginners and intermediates and advanced and above. And we also wanted to make sure that anyone, regardless of any sort of academic background experience, was also included. So we spent, again, weeks and weeks and weeks. I was super busy. You know this, Matt, more than anyone. But I was so busy with just like trying to get the legal paperwork, and Janet was trying to get all the hackathon organizing stuff done. She set up our dev post page where you can actually go and see all the projects that people made. And this was before we thought about the reception. We were like nervous. I was like, we're only going to get like 20 applications applications. Like it's not gonna pop off. It's gonna be like it's gonna be a failure or whatever. But when we announced it and we did the campaign, like it seemed like everyone was interested. We got like over 300 applications for this. And it is Team Liquid's first hackathon too. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And we, it translated to about 50, 60 projects that were finished in that weekend, and the variety was insane. Like that on top of having people be so engaged with our panels provided by Dell, Alienware, SAP, having our workshops. We had Hack Club who did like an intro to web dev workshop for anyone who wanted to build a workshop. We had Unity helping us with intro to C#. Like we had all these people from different companies just come and like help us because they were just so interested in the hackathon the more that we talked about it. And my coworkers can vouch for this. I just never stopped talking about the hackathon, like up until the event. Like they were just like hackathon, hackathon, hackathon. They're probably tired of me saying it right now, but it was fantastic. Like I would love to talk more about it, but I want to save room for like the other questions because if we don't, it's going to take up the whole 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's a brief overview, basically, of what Liquid's Hacks was. It was basically a way for participants to innovate and be creative in the same way that Team Liquid has been innovative and creative for the past 20 years.
Yeah, and for context, Vivian saying about how like she told all her coworker it was hackathon, hackathon, hackathon. To me, it was just like I have a big project coming up. It's really big and it's really cool, and I'm like I'm like I cannot wait. And when she sent me the tweet, she's like all capital letters. It's up dancing blue gif emote from Discord Nitro. And it was just like let's go.
Yes.
Yeah, and some of these submissions were absolutely insane. Looking at the webpage, someone made a Nerf gun into a motion controller and played Valorant with it. Someone like there were so many Discord bots all named after Blue Team Liquid's mascot. Someone made a website called didteamliquidwin.com, and so it literally just grabbed the score from any single like game, and you'd click on a game and just say, yes, here's the score, here's the tournament page, and literally just so many creative people coming out of the woodwork. It was honestly that whole page. I'll have to link it in chat later. It is such a delight to view. So going off of all of that, all of the build up and the expectations of, maybe 20 people are going to get, and then having 300 people apply. Did you and Janet find the event successful? And if so, how did you measure that success?
Oh, we did. It was definitely successful. Obviously, we know more about the behind the scenes and having to put out whatever fires we had to put out, but that's pretty normal of like any event really. Is before the event you have the anxiety of is it going to be successful, and even during the event you're going to be like there's going to be a fire somewhere, we're going to have to put it out, and it's insane. But I think we did find it pretty successful. Reason being is because when I had first pitched it back, I don't know how many months, I was really nervous. It was going to be in front of our partnerships team. It was going to be in front of our sales marketing team. It was going to be in front of our stream production, our community, our events team. Like there was going to be a lot of eyes that were going to be on this hackathon pitch deck that I had like never presented to anyone before. So I was really, really nervous. Like we set up goals and KPIs and everything, but I was like, I'm only confident we can hit like maybe one at most of like the 5 or 10 that we put. But surprisingly, like it, as I got to explain more and more, because since it was Team Liquid's first hackathon, not many people in the org knew what a hackathon was to begin with. So, my whole spiel that happened like 2 minutes ago was the same exact thing I had to say to everybody. And I had to really practice and hone in on how to articulate it to them in a way where they can understand it and see how they could get involved. Mm-hmm. So I think that in itself is also a success, to be able to take a concept and translate it in a way that makes sense to people and makes them clearly see that this is something that can bring value to your org. This is something that is valuable for our partners and potential partners in the future. The event overall still successful, right? Like the whole like I was expecting 20 people and 300 plus applications came in. That was crazy. I was also kind of thinking the same thing with the number of projects going in too. We had 3 different themes for the hackathon. It was esports, so general esports, Team Liquid, so anything Liquipedia or anything blue related, which you can see right over here. Sleeping.
Oh, he's tucked in.
And
That's
we
so
had,
cute.
I know it's adorable. And we had health and wellness too, and we had different categories as well. So it went from so we had like best esports hack, best health and wellness hack, best Liquipedia API hack. They were generous enough to provide an API for us, which is fantastic. Um, we also had best game hack as well. So it was in a way with the best game hack category, it was kind of a hybrid hackathon game jam sort of thing. Game jam coming soon, by the way. Um,
Oh, really?
we had all of these. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we had all these things going on. And again, I was expecting just like one project per category, and that was it. And we'd be like, oh crap, we have all this extra prizing. No, we had over 50 projects submitted by several different teams, and that was about like, after sorting through all the applications and whatnot, that was about 260 applicants. So that was 260 people who were willing to spend 36 hours on a weekend grinding out a project with up to 3 other people with them, and practicing good habits, of course, because we don't want to, burnouts is not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
It was completely, I was not expecting that at all. It was like it the I think just the results of what had happened, and how easy for the most part it was to sort of get all the stuff in the schedule done. I think it was a success, from the social campaign to all the stream graphics and overlays, which, by the way, if Jerome's ever watching this, holy heck, man, you are amazing. Like Jerome, who was the creative lead, he created all the graphics, he created the look and the feel and the theme of Liquid Hacks, and it was like super amazing. It was like such a clean minimalistic tone, or a clean minimalistic feel. There was Nav on our social team, which, if she's watching this, hi, I love you, you're great. She was in charge of all like the copy that went out for the Twitter and for our LinkedIn and everything, and it got a lot of reception. It was amazing. Like, I looked at the post stats for the event and I'm like, wow, this is like beyond what I could imagine. It was crazy. And then, of course, we had like stream production. So Zach, if you're watching this, thank you. You are the best. He handled all the panels and workshops and everything, and it went all smoothly. It was a success thanks to like the Team Liquid staff. But especially like, to Janet, who was like literally my support rock. She was like, I literally after the event was just like, hey, thanks for dealing with me. Like it reached the point where we were so tired, like during the event, because we were working so hard in the back, and it was just the point where we're just like, dude, thanks. Like, thanks for putting up with my stuff. Thanks for being my support rock. Thank you just for being you. I can't like thank her enough, and I can't give her enough credit for the work that she's done alongside me.
Yeah, that's honestly.
So yes, it was a success.
Yeah, amazing. The last thing I really wanted to talk about, because there are some really good questions in here that I really want to get to, and also give people in chat a chance to ask.
Yes.
Was, you mentioned that there was a game jam is planned in the future. Can you tell us about any other community events that are sort of in the crock pot of your workload?
Yeah, so Liquid Hacks initially was gonna just be like a hackathon thing that happened every single year. But knowing me, I didn't want to do that. I'm someone who gets very bored very easily. I don't like to do the same things over and over again. If I do the same thing, they have to be different in some way. And so when I was thinking about the mission statement of Liquid Hacks and seeing how it would be defined as, I looked at it more as an initiative as opposed to like a sort of like a program or some kind of like project, because I wanted it to expand into not just people doing hackathons and coding and programming, but I wanted it to be a representation of how Team Liquid can redefine or hack, as I like to say it, as redefining or hacking esports education. So not only will I try to provide opportunities for software engineers, but also for people who want to pursue different esports careers, people who are into graphic design, people who are into finance, into social sciences, communication. I know you're a big communications guy. I want to like figure out ways to help educate people, and get them in contact with us, and like have like things like our sponsors providing different panels and maybe tech demos if possible. So there's a lot cooking. It's a lot of ideation at the moment, but I feel like once everything's all flushed out and everything, and there's a plan and a budget, because funding is nice. I'm hoping that everyone else will be able to see what Liquid Hacks really encompasses. Basically it's just hackathons and beyond is what I'm calling it for now.
Amazing. And that's something that we've definitely talked about a lot. Not just, I mean, obviously not just the hackathon, but in terms of, you know, representation across the board in not only the gaming industry, but at the collegiate level, at just like the personal level, just making sure that you create opportunities for people to be included at all times, which I think is something that's really amazing that you're doing, something that I strive to do with whatever whatever events we create for PlayMU, when we just try and like we had like a huge meeting and talked about like, okay, how can we get more people playing video games in our meeting, because we had people, so we usually would just play like the same game over and over again. It'd be like Jackbox. It's just like, well, Jackbox is really inclusive because you just play it on your phone, but what about the people that play on console and don't like Jackbox? Well, here are some cross-platform games that are free. And so I'm super huge into the idea of just including as many people in video games as possible, whether it's watching, playing, anything. And going off of that, as you know, as you said in your introduction, and as you sort of echoed throughout this whole talk about inclusion, you know, you're someone who is a woman in a field that is like typically dominated by men. You're a person of color. You're part of the LGBT community. Do you feel like women and other people that share like your intersectionalities are properly and appropriately represented in the space?
The short answer is yes and no. I think yes, because I feel like we have made progress. You are right. This is an industry and a space that's dominated by men, in particular cis hetero white men. So, you know, looking at all the things that have happened, we're seeing like all female rosters. So there's competitive progress in that. We're seeing a lot of women pursue a career in pro gaming. So we're seeing it there. We're seeing a lot of people in the community, which I think it's been there for a while, like to see not just men cheering on players, but also women, you know, representing and cheering and supporting their favorite teams through different mediums, like, you know, artwork and, you know, they probably do like cosplays and all that stuff. And there's so much representation there in community. And of course in academics, where we're seeing a lot of women pursue careers in teaching about esports education. I actually know a few women who actually do that. They're actually starting their own curriculum at their universities or their colleges, and I think it's fantastic. So we are seeing a lot of progress now, but I think it's going to be it's like a never-ending endeavor. It'll be there forever. Even if we reach a point where we're like, wow, women really are represented well now in esports, I think we're still gonna have a long way to go, because there's still a lot of social issues that I think need to be covered. Looking back in June or July with the whole Me Too movement, we saw a lot of women coming forward with their stories about their experiences in social environments with people, and those were just people who were open enough and comfortable enough to share their stories out in public. We're not even considering the people who are still choosing to keep it private, which is fine either way. And there were, I think, also like a handful of men in there as well. So obviously, like, you know, harassment and all that stuff is not exclusively women, but it seems like the case that most women do experience it more than others. So is there progress? Yes. But are we done yet? Absolutely not. I think there's so many more that we can do. And, you know, like things like even just being inclusive and just saying like, hey, like this LAN party is available for everyone, like just being open about it, sticking up for people, especially women, when they're in uncomfortable situations, or, you know, helping to get them out of those situations, I think is also really important. The whole concept of being a white knight, that, you know, the whole idea of that being like an insult, I think is ridiculous. I think it's cooler to say that you were able to stand up for someone, when they were, being harassed or bullied, rather than say that, oh, you were just on the sidelines watching. I think that makes a lot more sense logically in my head. So yeah, just to reiterate what I said like a few seconds ago, yes, we've made progress, and I feel like women are slowly starting to get the recognition that, we do deserve. But there's still a long ways to get there, and I feel I have confidence that it's gonna get there eventually.
I think those are a lot of great points. I definitely agree. And like again, you resonate sort of like the epitome of what esports representation should be. Someone who started with no connections, and you didn't make it because you were anything other than good, right? You made it because you put in hard work. You showed you showed real talent, and you showed that you are not only have a positive work ethic, but have a positive attitude towards relationships and towards interacting with people both inside and outside of the industry to improve the industry as a whole. So I think that's really really cool, and I wish a lot more of the industry was like that, both esports and gaming.
Thank you.
Of course, another thing that we really talked about in our way back in, I don't know, what was it, like May? We talked a lot
Yeah.
about mental health and how sort of the uh, the global unpleasantness of just everything happening at the same time was really not, I don't want to say not fun because that's really downplaying the issue, but it was very mentally taxing, and you're someone who definitely values positive mental health practices. So what I wanted to ask is that, do you find it important to try and stay positive at all times while still tuning into the current events and still remaining globally conscious of everything going on?
So I think realistically, um, we can try to aim to be as positive as possible. I mean, yeah, like you're right. Like it's 2020 has just been an absolute it's been disastrous, not really the right term, but for lack of better wording, it's been interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The whole COVID putting everyone into quarantine, and the combination of that along with like I live in the West Coast, and California is literally on fire like every week or so. So we have to deal with that. We also, of course, like the elections, I know was also something that was emotionally and mentally taxing for a lot of people, because that it kind of was do or die for some people. Um, I think we can always strive to be as positive as possible and sort of see the light in situations. But as human beings, we have many emotions. We can be sad, we can be angry, we can do all that stuff. So I think that it's important that it's okay to know that you don't have to be happy all the time. Um, the whole idea of like good vibes only or positive vibes only, I think is setting something a little bit unrealistic. I think it makes sense to sort of like, if you're feeling anything other than happy, then that you should know that it's valid. It's okay that if you're sad about something, if you're angry, if you are annoyed at something, like that's okay. It really is. As for like other sort of mental health practices, one that isn't directly tied to, okay. Uh, Sorry about that.
You're good.
Um, one, this is the most like COVID thing ever. One of the things that I've noticed that isn't directly tied to COVID per se is the whole idea of burnout and sort of like grinding. We always have heard about like the midnight grind, or like burning the midnight oil, or whatever that quote is. And we've seen people say like, you should work hard, and your passion should fuel you and drive you. And while I do agree that this is a very, on top of it being like a network, uh, somewhat heavy industry, it is a very passion driven industry as well, because the employees and the professionals in the space, are very passionate about esports, and that's great. Um, but alongside with it comes the idea of sort of glorifying bad habits. The idea of staying up late is seen as like something that's super cool, or something that's like very admirable. Something along the lines of like not eating for like a few days, or not drinking water. Like for some reason, people love to hear good things about bad habits, and they like to hear bad things about good habits. I don't know why that's the case, um, but I think it's important to know that, um, if you're wanting to join in the esports space, or if you want to work in the space, that it's okay if your habits, your values don't exactly line up with that of other people. Obviously, I'm not trying to say that if you're a bad person that you should just stick to those morals and values, right? But what I'm saying is that if you're someone who would rather sleep in at like 10 to 11 p.m., and you're someone that drinks, enough water and like eats like 3 square meals a day and everything like that, and everyone else doesn't, like you don't necessarily have to follow in those steps. You can set boundaries for yourself. I think that's also very important too. You can set boundaries. You can say no to calls that you don't need to be in. You don't have to, expend your energy in places that you feel wouldn't be valuable to you. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about as I've been sort of like progressing into the year, is just thinking about where I want to expend my energy, who I want to be with, who do I want to talk to, which experiences I want to have over others. So that's really how I think about it. It's, you can be optimistic while also being realistic.
I think that's definitely great. I think that's a lot of recognizing that, not having to be positive all the time is okay. I think that's definitely a great message to get out there. We have about 10 minutes left in the stream, and so we want to open up questions to you, chat. I know some people, like we had the email out there, askliquidvivian@gmail.com. And I know we didn't get a whole lot of stuff there, but we thought, it's pre-questions. If people think of questions now, then they can ask them now. So if you have any questions, please type them in chat. We are looking at chat. We'll try our best to answer everything that comes up. I know we got one question that I'm pulling up right now. Let me see if I can find it really quick. And I believe it was sent in from Commissar Rage in chat. But while I pull that up, we have a question from Douglion in chat. Has your job ever had you communicate with other teams or orgs in the scene, and what does that entail?
Ooh, so what's really nice is that because like Team Liquid is involved in pretty much every esports title that's out there. I'm almost certain. I think we're in about 16, 17. And so what that entails for us is that we get to talk to people in other teams and orgs, whether it's their fans or their staff or things. So I know that if anyone knows me personally and they know me well, they know that my favorite team, or my second favorite team outside of Team Liquid, is FlyQuest. And I've got to know the lovely folks over there. They are super amazing. I love what their brand stands for. They're all about positivity. They're always about helping the planet. They had their I think it was their fish quest and their what was their other one? It was something about plants. I forgot. But they're always about being wholesome, and they're always looking to give back to the community, and from an environmental standpoint, it's fantastic. So the graphic designer Fiend, who I am very, very good friends with, we are, she's just doing so well. I think she knocks it out of the park with her graphic design. Trisha, who recently became their CEO, is amazing. Tricky, all their employees are just fantastic. That's on a personal level. On a brand level, we have worked with other orgs. I think we worked with G2 to create some best in the West apparel. We did that, I think, back in 2019 for Worlds. And I think this year we did Team Liquid x G2 Valorant Showdown. I think that was it. So there's a lot of communication there, working with them. Obviously we're enemies on the Rift because it's LEC versus LCS. But in collaborations like this, I think it's pretty cool to see sort of that level of intersectionality between different regions. So that really is how is the different communications that I and the brand have with different teams and orgs.
Yeah, and besides that, there are the obvious connections that go past the organizational level in terms of just esports. So you have things like Team Liquid's collab with Marvel, putting out pretty much every single Marvel jersey under the sun. Obviously the Alienware Training Center, it's there are connections kind of everywhere, which is really astounding. We do have a question from Commissar Rage that he sent me a little while ago. So this is mostly about sort of collegiate in esports, and sort of how noticing that companies and especially colleges and even some high schools at the academic level starting to recognize that esports are a thing. Do you think that more like companies, maybe organizations that aren't necessarily related to esports, are going to start reaching out at the collegiate and maybe even high school level to start creating an esports environment?
Oh, I think so. Definitely. It's starting.
Mm-hmm.
We have I'm noticing a lot of, I think I mentioned this earlier in this video, but I've noticed a lot of professors and a lot of faculty are getting very invested in esports, to the point where they are willing to sit down with students and be like, look, I don't know a lick about esports. I still spell it with a capital S. Please educate me.
Or like a
Um,
dash, like a hyphen in the middle of it.
Or the dash, yeah. Oh my gosh, that's one of the worst. It's crazy. Yeah, if you ever go on LinkedIn and someone like talks to you about esports and they put the dash or the capital S, like just say no
Mm-hmm.
immediately. I'm just kidding. But I think so. Like realistically speaking, I think it makes sense. Um, what's interesting about it too is that it's not just limited to the schools that have all that funding or that already have an established esports program. So if we're looking at schools like UCI, which already have an esports arena, or UCLA, who already have the support from their faculty, like we're starting to see a lot of other universities and even small colleges like get involved too, which is insane. It's the amount of the number of possibilities and the value that universities themselves get from investing in esports, in collegiate esports and professional, is like it's gonna be crazy because it parallels somewhat for the most part in the same way as like traditional sports, um, and I'm drawing a blank here. Oh yeah, okay. It kind of parallels in the same way with traditional sports, right? Like when you represent your university for, like a junior varsity team or whatever, that gives the school, branding and marketing. Same thing with esports. Like you train these players at the collegiate level. They compete with other collegiate teams. You go to leagues and invitationals and all these tournaments and stuff, and you start getting your name out there. Not only will the player themselves get the recognition, but also the school and university. So the more that these schools invest in their esports programs or their collegiate programs, the more value that they're going to get from the university. And if esports orgs can cash in on that, not monetarily strictly, but if they can use that as an opportunity to convince these schools that esports is a thing, esports is an industry that has people being paid to basically pursue their careers and passions, then it's going to be a win-win for both esports orgs and for universities and other educational institutions.
Yeah, I think that's definitely great. And just for clarification, just so that way everyone gets the word from a professional, esports is spelled lowercase e, no space, sports. Right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
awesome.
Yes.
That
It's
way we.
either, yeah, so it's either capital E, no space sports, or it's just all lowercase e sports. There's no dash, there's no capital S, there's no all capital S's. Like it's just one of those two.
So wait, they do
Like
all capital S's like E, capital S, sport. Oh, that's gross. I
yeah,
hate that. I
it's
hate that so
yeah,
much.
it's the craziest spelling ever. Yeah, like some of my friends will they know for a fact that it kind of tilts me sometimes. So they'll actually spell it like that on purpose, or like they'll put every single like weird spelling they can put for esports and just put it all in one word. I'm just like, you guys are the worst.
So we do have time for one more question. I have one on our list that we didn't get to. Again, going back to Liquid Hacks, and again going back to the very nature of this conversation, while the event wasn't strictly collegiate, was it made with the collegiate community in mind?
Um, that's a good question. I knew going into sending out applications that our primary or our target audience would be university and college students. It just makes sense. Like they are the ones who are either about to graduate or they are still pursuing an education. And whenever I get the classic question of, I'm new to esports, I have zero experience, how do I break into the scene? Like I've probably answered that about 500,000 times. And one of the pieces of advice I always give is just to start building up your portfolio. And portfolios don't have to be strictly coding or programming. It can be a portfolio of photos if you're a photographer. It can be video or edit reels if you are a what is it, like a video editor. It can be your graphic design if you are a graphic designer, if you want to pursue that. So it was designed with that in mind, but when I was thinking about who would be able to participate, I wanted to be as super inclusive as possible. I didn't want this to be another collegiate program. I didn't want it to just target people in a university or a college. I wanted it to target people who were willing to learn. So no, we're talking about people who've only maybe had some education. We're talking about people who probably dropped out of school for whatever reason. We're talking about veterans who just came back from the war and or military training and are wanting to, jump into a different career. We're talking about new moms who maybe, after starting a family want to get into another career again. We're thinking about, all these different people. So, I didn't want to pigeonhole this to just be students. I wanted this, to be people who are, who want to be students in the sense that they want to learn a lot. And that was really like something that I was pushing. So if you notice in the marketing, like I didn't say anything about collegiate. And even in the legal work, the requirement was that the only requirement really was that you had to be 18 or older at the time of the event, and you had to reside in either the U.S. or Canada. And that was also another thing too, if I'm going to touch on it. I know we might go over, but that's okay.
That's
okay.
I have
all the time in the world. One of the things that I had heard as feedback from a lot of my Canadian friends, which, hi, if you're Canadian, hello. One of the things that they had mentioned that, I'm curious to see why other orgs haven't done this yet, is that when they are presented with opportunities in NA, whether it's for internships or or actual jobs or things like that, they are presented or marketed as NA. But then when they go to read the paperwork or the fine print or the terms of service, it just says only open to people in the 50 states and District of Columbia, which is very misleading because NA is not just the US. It's Canada, it's Mexico, I think, is Greenland part of North America too? I'm not sure.
I don't think so. I think that's Europe.
Okay. Well, my geography skills are not up there, but
mine definitely aren't either. Someone in chat could probably Google it, and someone's gonna type in the comments that it's part of Antarctica actually.
Yeah, right. If someone in chat could check and see what countries are in North America, that'd be great for me. But yeah, they, when they hear NA, they're like, oh, Canada, and then they see it and they're like, oh, it's actually not Canada. So I took some time to talk to Janice, our legal coordinator. Which, hi Janice, love you too. This is just a whole shout out for all of my entire team because they're great. But she and I spoke together with our law firm, and we wanted to make sure that the legal work clearly said that if you were in the U.S. or you were in Canada, that you were eligible for the hackathon. So I'm trying as hard as I can, along with Janet. Both of us wanted to be as inclusive as possible, not just in terms of students, but also regionally. And again, since we talked about women being inclusive or including women in the space, Janet and I are we're huge advocates for women in tech and gaming and stuff like that. We wanted to make sure that this was also a space for them as well.
Yeah, I think that's definitely great, and I think this is a perfect spot to wrap up it because we definitely made the time back for when the stream went down. So he's just sort of the snake eating itself, talking about the event and representation, going all the way back and circling in on itself. Vivian, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for talking. Do you have anything that you'd like to plug? Any socials or anything?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to follow me and listen to all my shenanigans, I'm Vivi Contrast on Twitter and Instagram, Contrast on Discord. Anywhere else, you're probably getting catfished.
Amazing. Yeah, this has been a long time coming. We have a lot of cool stuff that we're planning for you guys in the future. There's gonna be a lot more PlayMU and Team Liquid content coming in the months. Until then, thank you guys so much for watching. You can follow PlayMU on Facebook and Twitter. If you want to support us, you can buy some SteelSeries stuff. We are SteelSeries brand affiliates. You can't say sponsors, so we're not sponsored by them, but we work with them. If you go to steelseries.com, you can do steelseries.com/PlayMU. And then use our coupon code PlayMU10. You'll get 10% off your order, and we'll get a little bit of kickback to help organize some awesome community events and do prizing, all that stuff. That's going to do it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your night and afternoon.
Later, guys.